How are you?
I'm doing well. Great to join you.
Yes. So, hi, everybody. Welcome and thank you all for joining us for our very first Build Business 2021 conference and conversations, where we are talking all things build business with some of our specific speakers, some other things that are happening this year. So, this is our very first one. New technology, new everything. So, everyone, bear with us. I am Bethany Smith. I'm Marketing and Corporate Communication Vice President for Messler Construction Company, and I'm also your conference chair for Build Business this year. So today we're going to just kick it right off now. We're thrilled to have our first guest, our very talented Kai Kite, who is joining us today. He is one of our Max speakers, and he is presenting Compose Your World. This is actually a Max presentation, but it's also a collection of sessions that are going to cover the overall theme of RISE, which stands for Resilience, Impact, Strength, and Equity. Kai is a classically trained violinist turned innovative composer. He uses music as a metaphor to help inspire others across the world when it comes to imagination, fulfillment, and inspiration for inclusive thought leadership. He's performed for thousands across the world, everywhere from the White House to the Great Wall of China. And we're just so excited to have you here today. So Kai, let's just jump right in and start. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what's brought you, what your journey's been to bring you here today?
That's a great question. I think a lot of things have brought me here. So I started playing the violin when I was really young, and I was 3 when I started. And since then, it's always been more than just music. So even growing up, I had this teacher, I think around like middle school, where we would start playing a piece of music. And then 5 minutes into the lesson, he would say, "Put your instrument down." And we would look at this one section of the music, and he would go on this kind of like philosophical speech about how this piece in the music is directly relates to how we need to be decisive in life and how we need to make a decision and go one way or the other. And that's how each lesson was. And so since I was like really young, like 10, 11, 12, I was thinking, oh, like music it's more than just notes. It's more than just sound. It's almost like this pathway to talk about life. And so that wasn't explicitly known to me, but it was in the back of my mind. And then I had a number of experiences that kind of expanded that. So the one was my own mother being diagnosed with cancer and coming to me sharing all these regrets on life. And for me, there was this turning point where after that, I started to compose my own music. And I started to really have this question, like, how do we live a life in which we're not just playing the notes we've been handed, but a life in which we're bringing new music to the world? And so that's been this question that's really been drilled into the back of my head. And so then, having this background as a musician, I didn't actually study music in college. So I went to Stanford and I was in their design program, and I was surrounded by all my mentors and teachers. They were all authors and creators, designers who were using the design process to talk about business and teamwork and like leadership, like all these concepts. And so I kind of got this inspiration. I was like, oh, well, I want to do something similar, but with music. I think the musical process has so much to teach us. I think so often we look on stage and we see the performer and we're like, oh, they're doing something that's like separate from us, right? We see music as this almost like magical thing, but I think there's so many lessons in it that directly apply to our day-to-day life, whether we're actually on stage or whether our stage is an office or the marketing that we're doing, anything. And so I'm here today because that's just what excites me most, like dissecting the musical process and then offering insights, metaphors that we each can use in our life and our day-to-day. And I don't know, it's just the most fun thing for me to do. And so I'm honored to really be able to share this with you all.
That's great. I mean, I'm really excited to hear you speak. So let's actually talk about that. Let's talk about your main session. If you had to just put it into a few words, what are you hoping that people will walk away with? What are you hoping to share with everybody at Build Business?
Yeah. So one of the main sessions out of the RISE compilation is the first one, resilience, right? And so what does it mean to be resilient? I think in the past year, we've been asking ourselves that question, right? And there's a lot of going back and forth in which we have to like rethink the ideas that we had even just weeks before, months before. And so there's this constant maintenance. There's this constant like cycle of redoing, rethinking our ideas. And in so many ways, that is the revision process for a composer, right? You have your initial draft, but then you play the sound out loud. You're kind of confronted with reality. You're confronted what the sounds around you actually sound like. And then you have to go back and make changes. And you have to go back and rethink ideas that you believed in. And you have to have discernment over, some ideas you might think they're beautiful, but in order to actually serve this piece of music that you're creating right now, you have to be able to put them aside for now. And so in this section on resilience, I want to use that revision process as a metaphor to think about how we can go about updating our ideas, revising our vision for our companies or for our marketing plans, revising our thoughts for even maybe our careers, like revising that thought process and offering some insight on how composers do that each person can hopefully use in their own work.
I love that thought. And I think too, as we grow as marketers or as business folks and as business developers or wherever we are in our career, the more you grow, you have to have those, like, you have to keep revising those ideas, right? You might have all these great ideas, but then you have to look at, well, now I'm in management and I have other people to think about, or I have other departments to work with, or the business is heading in a different direction. So it's like the core is still there, but you need to revise the approach that you're taking or how it's looking, right, in order to serve the business needs. So I love that correlation.
Yeah. So
go ahead.
Something with that too that you just mentioned. It's like, okay, yeah, if we're in a position of leadership, right, if we're leading a team of business developers, like the revising isn't just us rethinking our own ideas. It's actually communicating how we're going to make that revision to others, right? Because it happens in music where a composer will like hand off sheet music to the performers to play, and then they'll go back and they'll change it. They'll kind of pull the rug from underneath them after they've already invested that time and energy into learning that part. And so part of the skill set of revising is actually to be able to communicate where we are in the process, communicate our own uncertainty around our ideas, and kind of make that part of the process as well. So that, when we do change our ideas, when we do need to revise, when we do need to change the path, people are going to buy into it because we've been kind of transparent on where we are in the process. So yeah, there's so many elements to it.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Everything you say, I'm like, yes. That sounds exactly. So I want to step back for a second. So you mentioned you went to Stanford and you were majoring in design.
Yeah, they have a product design program in the School of Engineering.
Product in the School of Engineering. So I thought I remembered seeing the word engineering on your resume, because as a lot of us marketers are we work with engineers every single day. And in our role, we're often asked to be that facilitator of idea generation or idea creation, or helping the technical folks step outside of their comfort zone and expand upon what they're doing. And engineers don't often see themselves as creative. And even though they're clearly creative because they're creating, whether it's they're building something or they're drawing something or whatever it is, but they kind of look at us as, oh, that's the creatives, or you guys have to handle that. And I'm just going to, do my work there. So you were talking about, helping people write the music and how you were really learning that from your professor or your music teacher at a young age. What do you think what have you learned through this process and composing music that you think us as marketers or business developers could use in that role that we have at our companies, as trying to help our engineers or construction managers or the technical folks that we work with see the opportunity that they have to rewrite their music?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I have a couple of thoughts on that. One, I think in this journey of me like sharing ideas, I'm constantly kind of reflecting on the ideas of my own that I want to shift and improve on. And so one idea that I think I've come to really accept more is we often have like we have too limited a scope on balance. So we often think of balance being something that's like the duty of like the individual. Like each person needs to be all of these things, but in music, like balance is really achieved on the ensemble level, right? Like the cellos, they can't do certain
I'm
things.
writing this down, by the way.
Their instruments can't do certain things that the flutes or the violins can do. And I think often in this name of balance, we end up stripping ourselves of these really important personal qualities that the team actually needs. So you talk about kind of the technical aspect, we need people to kind of think in more like in those linear terms. Like that is really important. I think the problem we run into is when we have a disconnection between the technical and the human. And what I mean is like in music, we often there's these two selves. There's like the technical like practice room self, and then there's the stage self, right? So the practice room self is like learning all the notes, making sure like practicing with the metronome, and then we think we can just go on stage and turn the musicality on and create something that's going to shift people. And so there's this disconnect between the technical components and the actual art. And I think the practice of becoming like an artist in music and life and work is bridging that gap, right? So understanding that we may not need all of the engineers to be the composers, but what we do need them to understand is that their technique is so important. Like their ability to hit the right notes, to have that quality is so important, but that hitting the right notes is not the goal. It's a vehicle to something greater, right? And so if you're the marketer or the business developer, it's like, okay, maybe not needing them to be these, it's great if they are, but maybe not needing them to be these ultra like imaginative, like kind of like superheroes of thought, but no, just can we communicate them into a way to show them how their technique, how them hitting the notes, how their data is serving this higher like human cause, and to put that at the forefront so that the technique is in service of that higher purpose. Because what often happens when we don't have that, we have this disconnection where we have a lot of innovation, but without actually transformation. So we have new ideas, new techniques, new processes that are technically incredible, but they don't actually make a difference to the actual impact of the music that we're trying to make. And so I think it's just bridging that gap for people is incredibly important, but also like respecting and like celebrating that kind of technical side that does have, it may have its downsides, just like any persona does, but celebrating that because it's so important to the ultimate aim of the ensemble.
I love that thought, because really that's what all of us are doing in this industry. There is no, it takes more than one person to build a building. It takes many different companies all bringing together, I guess, their different pieces of music to create that full orchestra, that full ensemble. So that's really, that definitely speaks to what we do as a company or as an industry, I should say. And, it's like I wouldn't necessarily say marketers and BD folks are the, we're not the composer, and we're not we're not leading the playing, oh my gosh, I'm totally drawing a blank.
Yeah.
This guy,
the conductor.
The conductor. Oh my God. And we actually had one of our PLS groups call themselves conductors, and they were talking about music. Oh my gosh. So we're not there, but we're like we're the folks that help them. We need to help them feel that inspiration, I guess, and put the heart into what they're doing. Almost like when I was listening to you, I was thinking about how, you said the technical, people are really good at the technical part of it, but the musicality comes from more like connecting with the final vision and bringing their heart into it. And that's where we can really impact the building process, I think.
Yeah,
So
that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, so let's talk about a little bit about your inspiration. You touched on it briefly, your journey and what got you here, but I think we all have those times when we're just like, ugh, I don't have it in me today. If I have to, smile at one more person, I'm gonna lose it, or whatever it is, and it's hard to find that inspiration. Where do you look for inspiration when you need to work on composing or just working on a one of your presentations that you're giving?
Yeah, I would say my two sources of inspiration. One is just like nature. So I live kind of like in the mountains near LA, and just for me, that's just like this recentering thing that I've had a lot more time to explore during COVID. And I think the main source of my inspiration for the speaking part and music is like my own anxieties and like my own just like points of tension in life. So for me, it's like, right, I'm not a marketer, right? I'm not a business developer. I'm a musician, a composer, but I go to all these different places and share ideas that can like resonate or connect. And so for me, I think what connects all of those different places and like all those different countries, it's not necessarily, it's not the job, it's not the age, it's not the demographic. It's these emotional things that we're experiencing in our work that we don't often talk about. So it's like that conflict when we have an idea, but then someone beneath us has an idea that's kind of better when we feel a little envious, right? Like, or it's that moment of conflict where we're like, something's wrong. We don't know what to say because we don't know how that's going to like shift the power balance on the team, right? Like those things are really interesting to me. And so when they happen to me, I really like to dissect them. I like to write about them. I like to write music about them. I like to explore them, and like that fuels a lot of what I share on stage. So it's just kind of like sitting with pretty much any moment that I feel awkward or uncomfortable and just like asking like, why is that there? And assuming that other people will probably feel something like this. It'll look very different depending on their work, where they are, their age perhaps, but like just knowing that if I'm feeling something that's a bit off, it's probably common to other people. So let me sit with that. And yeah, I guess I've had a lot of time to do that during COVID, but that's, I think that's my main source of inspiration. And that's what I find to be most interesting about going to all these different spaces, is finding those connections.
So let's jump into your writing process now. So my husband is a musician, and he writes, I feel like he's writing music constantly. And I've talked to him about writing processes. And I know that when you're composing music, everyone kind of has their own way that they do it. Is it, how would you describe the way you compose a new piece?
It's funny. So I always love like writing by hand. And I have like in my cabinet over there, I have tons of like old sheet music. And it's just, I kind of was like romanticizing it because it looks like it's just like this historic thing. It's like this thing that belongs in a museum, right? And then over COVID, I finally just started just writing music on a computer on this like software program. And the music is so much better. It's just like infinitely better. I can revise so much more quickly. So I realized I had this like romanticized version of how a composer should write. So for me, it's just, I love the editing process. So I love like sitting with something for a long time and like tweaking it and like coming back to it. And so also one part, I think we shared before this, I'm releasing an album soon that I made over COVID. And one part of that process was making recordings as quickly as possible. So like making recordings just like on my phone. And I think I made like 2,000 or 3,000 like really small recordings, like 10 or 15 seconds, just like test the ideas and to see like, okay, what do these ideas actually sound like? And to do that as quickly as possible, as early in the process, is really helpful for me, just so I can kind of get out of my head, so I'm not stuck in that like kind of delusion of what it sounds like, and can kind of get to the actuality of it. That's really helpful as well. Yeah. So yeah, recordings and then lots of revisions.
That sounds a lot like the writing process for just writing a blog post or a thought leadership piece that marketers have to do sometimes, or it's a BD person, BD folks might do for creating a strategy to win a client. You kind of get your first thoughts out there, and then you have to be willing to revise as you go to find that final piece. I would venture to guess it doesn't wind up as beautiful as the music that you create, though.
Well, thank you.
So we've talked about the pandemic a few times, and how the last year's been. And I think, we heard a lot of people say that while there were so many things that, the past year and a half that were tragic or that, hit us all in a negative way, there was also really a lot of positive things. I think if we look for those positive things or innovations that have come out of the situation we've been in for the last year and a half, how has it affected you in the way that you talk or work, or just, what are your thoughts around that?
It's affected me in a lot of ways. One, I was usually just on the road traveling a lot. And so I didn't realize how little of a foundation I actually had set up. Like, I'd never been in a place for this long. Like, I've never really just had routines and like actually had been on the same time zone. And like, it's been a while. And so that was eye-opening for me. It's just like, oh yeah, I can like have a thing that I do every morning. And it's like, I can have a certain place that I like to sit down. It's just, that was good for me. I think one, in terms of how I communicate, doing a lot of things virtually on Zoom, it's right. Like, I don't know how many people are viewing this, but they're probably not viewing it in a room together. They're probably viewing it alone. Right. So if I'm talking to someone, I'm talking to someone who's in their house. It's more personal. I'm not talking to a group. I'm not talking to because when you're an audience kind of has like this group mindset that they take on naturally. You'll laugh if the person next to you laughs. But like on Zoom, it's like, or whatever platform you're using, it's just, you're talking to one person who might have the kids in the other room, and like, they're just, so it's way more personal. And so for me, it's made me want to, just spend even more time making sure that have thought about what that person might be experiencing and kind of making sure that I can connect. And then the last one, it's allowed me to actually catch up, to like close the gap between, I think, the ideas that I've had in the background and what I can actually apply. Because when you're on stage, when you're presenting a lot, it needs to be in a certain form. And so that kind of leads to perpetuating like kind of the same ideas without starting from scratch again, because you need to just go to the next one and the next one. And so I think it's allowed me to actually sit with some of the ideas and the music at a deeper level than I've been able to do before. And so, I think those three ways, it's really been good for me in that sense.
Oh, that's exciting. I can't wait to see how that translates into your Max Talk and other sessions that we're going to have you for at Build Business. I know this industry is probably really new for you, or maybe you didn't know much about the built industry before we've contacted you and started working together. What do you think? What do you think of our industry, and what do you know about it, and what are you looking forward to bringing to our conference attendees?
That's a good question. I think so. I want to go back to something you mentioned earlier.
Sure.
And you were like, you don't see yourself as, or you see yourselves maybe as a composer, more as a conductor. And I think just from the limited amount of information that I'll have, and I'll know more as we go more to the date, but I kind of see you all as being composers in a sense, meaning that like there's the imagination, right? And there's the revision. And then after that, I think the part we don't talk about is like the translation. So like when a composer actually hands the music off, and it's that ability, like you can have all the notes and melodies you want in your mind, but it means nothing until you can put those notes into a language, into the right key signature, the time that fits the instrument you're actually trying to inspire. And so I think what's really cool about the industry that I know of so far, it's like this ability to transcribe, right? Like how do you communicate through, you're talking about like, the engineers versus like the public, like how do you communicate a message to all these different instruments, all these different parties, all these different stakeholders? It could be the same idea, but it needs to be presented in like a multitude of ways. And so that skill set is really interesting to me. And so I'd love to kind of offer some insights from music on how that can be even more strengthened, because I think it's a really special skill set to have.
That's awesome. I can't wait to see it. So we have about 5 minutes left together. And I just want to make sure, everyone gets to hear about all the wonderfulness. I know you've talked a lot that the wonderfulness of you that you're bringing to the conference. So is there anything else that you want to share? You said some really interesting things on your website, and I will tell our Build Business attendees, if you haven't gone to Kai's website, I definitely suggest that you do so. I can't remember what the site is off the top of my head. Kai, can you tell us what
it's my name. So Kai. If you look at the little name down there, I don't know where it is, but KaiKite.com.
Wherever that is down there. Yeah. KaiKite.com. So people should go look at it, and you can check out a lot of what Kai has to offer. But there was something I mentioned to you earlier that really stuck with me that I read on your website. Do you remember what I was talking about? How you want people to leave? Can you share that perspective with everybody?
Yeah. So I think a lot about like what my intentions are when I take the stage. And so one sign for me that I haven't really done my job quite well enough is if that people walk away thinking about me or like my music. And so my goal whenever I take the stage or offer any kind of speech or words like that, it's to really for people to think about how this relates to their own life. How can they apply it to their own stage, their own world, right? And I think sometimes when I perform, people will come to me and they'll say, "Oh man, I really should have kept playing the cello when I was like middle school." And like for me, I'm just like, okay, maybe, but also like maybe there's a way for you to apply that same artistry to the job, the world that's right in front of you, to how you treat your kids, your partner, to how you just interact with life. Like the same tools, the same kind of expression can come through in that. And so that for me is my job, to really really take music and demystify it and make it something that we all can feel that we can apply to our own life and our work. So I think it's that important.
That's wonderful. Well, I for one cannot wait. I'm so excited. I think, it's going to bring a whole new element to Build Business. And I know we all wish we could be together in person, but of course we will be in a virtual setting again this year. And that doesn't mean we won't get a chance to see each other and enjoy a lot of different things together. So if you haven't signed up, if you haven't registered for Build Business yet, please do so. Kai, I just want to say thank you so much for joining us today. I just was a pleasure to have you here, and I'm so excited for what you're bringing to us, and I'm going to keep listening to your music, hopefully long after. I'm going to have my kids check it out too.
Amazing. Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Definitely. So again, everyone, make sure that you take the time to register for Build Business, and you can see what Kai and our other speakers are going to bring to the table on August 2nd through the 6th. You can sign up now and still get our early bird rate through July 5th. Also, we have an awesome swag box that anyone who signs up by July 5th we can guarantee that you'll have it in time for Build Business. Everyone that signs up will get one, but the way for shipping and everything, we need to make sure that we have about a month to get it to you. So be sure to star on your attendee calendar Kai's Max Talk session. So when you sign up, you'll be able to go in and set your calendar, click on Kai's talk, and so you don't want to miss it. Thank you again so much. And I can't wait for your session. I can't wait to see everybody at Build Business in August. Bye, everybody.